4,
Five.
5. Episode 5.
This is Addicts Having Coffee, episode 5.
Thanks,
Yay.
Day. I don't know, I always do that afterwards. Hi, guys, and welcome to Addicts Having Coffee with me, Tony Quinn, where we talk addiction, recovery, and everything in between. And today we're at the studio again, the studio by Red's Imagery in Linden. And as you can tell, we've got the cool background. We've got artwork by Ansa. Shout out, Ansa. Ansa. I always say Ansa, but it's Ansa. Shout out. He's an amazing artist. And today we have Zach with us. And I'm so excited to have you in the studio, Zach. Welcome. You feeling good?
A bit nervous, but good, I think. Yeah.
I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's nerve-wracking. I think I don't do well in these kinds of situations, but I'm trying new things.
Trying new things is always a place to start. I just hope you feel comfortable and safe. And like, I've known Zach for quite a while now, probably about 3 years.
Jesus, it's been 3 years.
I think it's been 3 years. Like,
Yeah, that
genuinely.
sounds about right, actually.
I'm going based on my psychosis. It was 2023.
Yes.
Definitely. Okay.
It's definitely 2023.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 3, 4, 5. So 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. I've known Zach for 2 years. I did math. Thank you very much. But Zach, you're one of the most amazing people I've ever met in the room. And like, I've just always wanted to get to know you more. And every single time I hear you just share on your recovery or just see you, you just bring such calm and such joy. And I learn a lot from you. So thank you for being here. And thank you for sharing your story with all of us.
Thanks for inviting me, Tony. Yeah, like I said, happy to be here, just a bit nervous. But yeah.
Zach's nervous. No, the one thing, just to calm your nerves a little bit, like I say to everyone, you know, when we start sharing, we're talking about addiction, we're talking about recovery. There's a lot of mental health involved in that as well. If you feel uncomfortable with any topic, if I ask a question you're uncomfortable with, we can very easily move on. So feel free to set any boundaries in the space because it's yours. Okay.
Thank you. I'm ready.
Yay, we're gonna dive straight into it. So the best place to start, I think, when telling an addiction, recovery, mental health kind of story is from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. So I am originally from Cape Town. I spent my early years with my grandparents mostly. It was an interesting childhood, I think, is one way to categorize what that experience was like.
Got you.
I eventually did move to Joburg. I had a sibling, and I think that a lot of my internal difficulties began to show around that time, and a lot of past experiences that I had kind of assumed were buried quite deep or were just things that happened and weren't necessarily things that I needed to address came to the surface. And I guess that my addiction definitely started with self-harm. I was 9 when I started. And I think that it also became the beginning of this building of a toolkit of things to kind of cope with the feelings that I couldn't deal with. And yeah, it started with self-harm. And as I think addiction tends to go, it progressed very rapidly. And spiraled out of control very easily. I will say that even when I found drugs and alcohol, and even now in my recovery, like, self-harm has definitely been the most pervasive thing. It's been the thing that I've struggled with the most. And like, in my journey, I think that putting down drugs and alcohol when I was ready to put them down was an easier decision than it's ever been to stop self-harming. And yeah, that's been my experience.
Can I ask something about
Of
that?
course.
And I just really want to thank you for sharing about that. And I know I can't relate to it as I never self-harm, but I did struggle with an eating disorder, and that was my primary illness from the age of 9. And for me, it was a very similar kind of progression. And when I put down those substances, the eating disorder was the hardest battle for me. And a lot of people don't speak about self-harm. I had a question by a young person recently who said to me, is self-harm an addiction? And to me, based on the research I've done, it absolutely is, whether it's behavioral or coping. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely agree. And I think that what I struggled with the most, for example, with stopping, was that it felt so much easier to justify self-harming than it did to justify drugs and alcohol, because it felt like once I stopped drinking and using, it's almost like you can understand the insanity of the justifications that you used when you were drinking and doing drugs.
Yeah.
But then for self-harm, it's like, yeah, but like it's my body and like nobody's going to see it and you can hide it very easily. And like you cook up similar reasons in your head that you would for using and for drinking. But I struggled a lot with acknowledging and understanding that those justifications, though they look different to what I was to the ways that I was justifying drinking and using, are still justifications. Like there's still me trying to find ways to work around the fact that I know that this is a problem, and to continue doing it at the end of the day, like trying to find ways to make it okay in my brain so that I could continue. So I definitely agree, and I think that in my experience as well, every time that I've shared about self-harm, and I've shared about it quite frequently in like 12-step groups, because it's been such a big part of my life, I don't think that I've ever shared about it and not had someone come up to me afterwards and say, thank you for sharing about that, and like it's something that I've struggled with historically, or it's something that I'm still struggling with now. And I think that they very easily go hand in hand. You know, like drugs and alcohol very easily goes hand in hand with self-harm. It's just like a different flavor of self-harm, really.
Absolutely.
It's just a different approach to self-harm and self-destructive behaviors at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I really thank you for sharing that. And it doesn't trigger you at all to talk about it. Okay, great. I just always want to make sure with that, because I know, it's complicated, and I really appreciate it. I know there's a lot of people out there who really are struggling or have struggled with it, and to hear someone share on it in an addiction kind of environment is really powerful. So thank you, Zach. Okay, so floor's yours. Sorry.
So I guess self-harm was the first in the little toolkit that I started to build. And retrospectively, I can acknowledge that I think all of the things that I added to this toolkit of mine were just ways that I thought would help make me feel more in control of my life. It felt like everything was just out of grasp. Everything always felt like it was just beyond my realm of control. And I think that a lot of it came down to me wanting to find ways to control everything and make everything fit into the boxes that I needed them to fit in, so that I could cope and so that I could deal with the emotions, and trying to find ways to make emotions smaller, I guess. So that it felt like they could fit in me and I could deal with them easier, because they're smaller emotions now. And I think that self-harm did do that, realistically speaking. It did help with that. But like I said, it also spiraled out of control very quickly. And it's also not a feasible way to move through the world, I guess. And it took me a really long time to realize that. But yeah, so the self-harm started. And then shortly after that, I discovered alcohol. I was 12 when I started drinking. And it was very much a case of from the first moment that I drank, I was like, whoa, this shit turns my brain off. And I think that a lot of the toolkit was, okay, about finding ways to control things, but also about finding ways to escape, and finding ways to kind of just feel outside of myself and feel apart from myself. So I loved alcohol from the very beginning. I thought that it was incredible. I thought that it ticked all the boxes. It did all the things that I needed it to do. And I guess similarly to self-harm, it also spiraled very quickly, there was a brief kind of intermission. I got very sick when I was about 14, and I ended up in a coma, and it was a whole big thing. Yeah. And I think that in some ways it was good because I was forced to pause. Like, my body physically couldn't manage those kinds of things. So I was forced into a position of having to stop. But then once I was mostly like okay again, I felt like my life was even more out of control than it had been before. And I felt like there was even more reason to want to be outside of myself than previously. And so once I was well, as addicts do, I just picked right up where I left off. And very shortly after that, discovered drugs. And again, was like, whoa, this is ticking all of the boxes that I could possibly need to be ticked. And I guess that the toolbox just grew. And as much as it was physical things like self-harm and drinking and using drugs that were inside this little box of mine, there were also like unhealthy emotional coping mechanisms that I developed that didn't rely on physical mechanisms like drugs or alcohol to help. And like just very unhealthy ways to regulate my emotions or to kind of shut down and try to make everything fit, like I said.
Do you have, my voice, do you have any examples of how you would deal with emotions then?
Sure. I think that like a big behavioral example would be that I just wouldn't address things.
Yeah.
I would just avoid.
Yeah.
I would just like, if I don't address it, if I don't look at it, it's not real.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to pretend that it's not real. That was one of them. Another one was, and I know this is going to sound strange, but like when I was a teenager, I took a lot of naps.
Yeah.
And like unhealthy level naps. Like I should not have been sleeping for 16 hours at a time.
That's not strange. That's depression.
Well, definitely. But I was definitely using it in a very like unhealthy kind of way. And another thing that I always feel really strange talking about, because people are always like, that's not unhealthy. Yes, the fuck it is unhealthy if you're doing it to the extent that I was doing it. But the other one was like reading. Like that's all I would do with my time for like hours and hours and hours, and like a book a day, just sitting, the book. That was all that I would do with my time. Like not eating, not drinking, not going to the bathroom, just like so absorbed in whatever it was that I was doing and feeling like, okay, well, my brain is off, so I'm just going to keep going.
Wow.
Which I know is a very odd
No.
example, actually.
You know, it makes so much sense with what you were saying before, because you explained something that was really powerful for me. I mean, I'm taking stuff in because I'm really listening. I'm relating to a lot. You spoke about how the self-harm was almost like an element of control. And I love this idea of this toolbox. Like, it's really making so much sense to me. I don't know why I'm getting so emotional. So I do know why. You're just verbalizing things so beautifully, and it's like hitting me. You said how the self-harm was a sense of control and trying to kind of keep things in checks, like dealing with emotions in different kinds of ways and things like that. And then the alcohol comes in, and that's allowing you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, to have a sense of being outside of yourself, so not having that control and like letting it go. And the book, the reading to me can also be very similar, because you're reading, if it's a fiction book, you know, you're in a new world, you're in a different kind of place, you're in a different kind of environment. You don't need to be too concerned about everything else going on. And that's why I do believe it would be obviously unhealthy if you're doing it that consistently. You're constantly escaping or trying to control. Yeah. And no one really understands that juxtaposition, like living your life like that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think also just like I've realized retrospectively that these kinds of patterns or behaviors, and especially I guess the sleep and the reading are good examples of that, where it's like, and even I guess avoiding, like there's an extent to which it is helpful and which it is protective, and it's not necessarily understandable, but like there is an extent to which you can look at those behaviors and go, that's obviously normal. That's not pathological in any way. And I think that I've definitely learned that it might not be a pathological behavior independently, but like the extent to which I'm doing it is a problem.
Yeah.
The extent to which I'm going to escape myself or to feel in control or to feel like things fit inside or whatever it is, like that's a problem. But yeah, so those are some of the less so those are some of the ways, like the more behavioral ways, I guess, that I relied on to cope. And then I found drugs. Drugs were great. I thought that they were great, at least.
Was there a specific substance, or do you even remember the first time?
The first drug that I ever took was ecstasy. And I think that what I realized from that experience was definitely that, okay, to be fair, the first drug that I ever took was weed, but I just didn't.
It's so normalized.
Yeah, it's so normalized that in my brain I was like, that's not.
And it's not to say to anyone who's got a problem with that, we know it can be used.
Not.
Exactly.
Definitely not what I was implying.
No, I know. I know you guys.
So, and I think that experience as a whole made me realize that, like, okay, stimulants are the direction that I'm going to go, like cocaine, cat, those things. Like, that's the path that I'm going to take, because I like being all the way up there. Like, it's even better than alcohol, because alcohol's a depressant and alcohol brings you here. But, like, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to be up here.
Yeah.
I guess that I hopped around between them. It was, and then I realized, I guess, quite young that maybe the way that I was drinking and doing drugs was not normal.
Yeah.
And a lot of my justification came from like, but everyone around me is doing it. Like, I'm 17 years old. Everybody's doing drugs and drinking. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's not that deep. Not identifying that the way in which I was doing those things was very different to the ways that the people around me were doing them. And towards the end of like my high school career, things were quite turbulent in my life. And I decided that the turbulence, in conjunction with the fact that I definitely had like a budding substance abuse problem, meant that I should move across the country by myself.
Wow.
And I was 17 at the time, so I finished school early. And I got a scholarship to go and study at Stellenbosch. So I was like, I'm going to fuck off, actually. I'm going to go. It's going to be great. I'm going to have like this incredible life. I'm going to meet new people, and it's going to be fantastic. It was not fantastic. Being entirely by myself, and I'm also the eldest daughter, so I guess that there's a lot of responsibilities tied to being the eldest, and having like quite younger siblings. And like my parents' marriage at that point was also quite dysfunctional and definitely falling apart, and so it felt like a lot fell on me around that time. And I left, and it was a disaster, as I should have known that it would be. And while I was in Stellenbosch, my grandfather died.
I'm sorry.
And I think that it was all super like dramatic. Like, we all knew he was going to die, but like the death itself was still very hard. And I think that, again, retrospectively, because I guess a lot of it is retrospective, like you come into recovery and you realize a lot of things about your patterns and your behaviors and things like that. But retrospectively, I can acknowledge now that after my grandfather died, there was definitely a shift in my using. And it went from, oh, this is fun, I'm like escaping myself, I'm like just up there in the clouds, it's a good time, to like, I'm doing this to die. Like, I'm doing this because I actually don't even want to make the emotions fit inside myself anymore. I don't even want to just escape temporarily. Like, I'm done. I'm over it. I'm done with this life. And my mental health also took a really big toll around this period. I guess I struggle with my mental health as a whole. And drinking doesn't help that. Drugs don't help that.
They amplify it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
really do. And so those two things in conjunction, it was dark. And so I made the decision to leave Stellenbosch and come back to Joburg. And so that's what I did. And again, that idea of if I make a really big change, it's going to fix me.
Yes.
And I'm not actually going to work on myself to fix myself. I'm just going to change something like moving.
Yeah.
I'm going to move across the country. I'm going to be in a relationship. I'm going to change something like that. I'm not going to work on myself. I'm not going to change anything about myself to be better. I'm just going to
doing a
else.
geographical,
Yes.
essentially. I'm
Yeah.
going to move there. Everything's going to sort itself out, but we take ourselves with us. You know?
Yes.
And I get that.
And I guess I was also young. I was young and I was lost,
yes.
and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I was grieving and I was depressed and heavy. I think is if I were to categorize that period of my life, I would just say that I felt really heavy.
Can I ask something? I think it's unbelievable that you got a scholarship to Stellenbosch. That's an incredible achievement. And then also, you moved through high school, going through so much and still coming out with that. And a lot of people don't. People hear of someone who's struggling and expect only failure.
Yeah.
In the sense of that, I don't want to use the word failure, but struggling in school, struggling in that kind of environment. It's important to tell these stories as well, so that people can see you can still be struggling and looking to everyone else like you're able to support everyone else.
Yeah, I think you're definitely correct. I think that there is the assumption that struggle only looks a particular way, in the same way that there's the assumption that addiction only looks a particular way. And I think that it's been a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways. A blessing, I guess, because I was still able to go through school and perform very well and study and do all of those things, but also a curse because I feel like my gauge for what a level of being okay is completely skewed.
Yes.
And I think that I've always put a lot of pressure on myself in terms of academics, for example. So it's but I'm passing this degree, so I'm fine. I'm getting A's. It can't be that bad. And I think that it's definitely skewed my perception of what being okay actually means. And it's I can be in a really dark place, but I have work to do, so I'm going to do the work. And because I'm doing the work, that must mean that I'm okay.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that it's skewed that idea of and my therapist actually said it to me relatively recently, where she was you need to remember that you've always been very high functioning. And so what your life falling apart looks like isn't necessarily what you automatically assume a life falling apart to look like. And you still need the kindness and the softness with yourself.
Yes.
Just because it doesn't look the way that you think it should look, or even the way that it's looked historically, doesn't mean that you're not struggling.
Yes.
And doesn't mean that you're automatically okay. Yeah.
And also thank you for sharing that. So, I'm really, this is so important. The grief you experienced at such a young age and moving to a different city, did you have any connection or support within that community, in Stellenbosch? Were you alone and isolated? Do you even remember? Because I understand, I trust me, I get it.
To be fair, most of my family do still live in Cape Town.
Oh,
so I
yes.
guess that I did have that break.
Yeah.
In terms of I spent most weekends with my family and I didn't have to stay in res all the time and blah, blah, blah. But I will say that Stellenbosch was not the place for me on so many levels. It was really just not the place for me. And the drinking culture, the culture of the university itself, the way queer people were treated in that space, there was just so many levels of wrong that I felt in the space that it definitely worsened the overall experience and how I felt within myself at the time. So I did have support, and I did make friends while I was there, and like I'm still in contact with the friends that I made while I was there, but it was still a very isolating experience and a very eye-opening one. I think that having spent most of my life in Joburg and to an extent Cape Town, it's a very different culture to what a small town is like. And yeah, it was very eye-opening. I think that's the word that I'll settle on.
Yeah, and you went there by yourself, going through grief and struggling. Like, it's... Wow. So then you came back.
Yes. So then I made the decision to come back. It was after a very raucous night out. And I called my mom the next morning and I was like, I actually can't do this. Like, it's not switching degrees. That's not going to fix the problem. Like, I hate everything about this place. I'm not coping. I need to be home.
Yeah.
And she agreed, and I came home. And then I had like a period off, obviously, before I could start studying again the next year and like to kind of figure out what it was that I wanted to do and all of those things. And I think that still having that level of freedom of like, I don't have any responsibilities right now. Like, I'm not working, I'm not studying, I'm not doing anything. I'm just 17 and lost and grieving.
Yeah.
My substance abuse got a lot worse.
As it would.
Yeah,
As it would.
As it would. It got a lot worse during that period. And I was incredibly depressed. Like, incredibly depressed. It just felt like all of those feelings that I tried to run away from my entire life just all hit me at once. Like, the moment that I paused, everything came back. And it also, like, reached a point where it was like, nothing is helping anymore. Like, drugs used to make me feel good. Drugs used to make me feel outside of myself and, like, up here. And now nothing is working. I don't feel good. Like, nothing is fixing me. Nothing is fixing the way that I feel. And I went to go and see a therapist because I was like, that might be a good solution, is to talk to someone about how I'm feeling. And she recommended an inpatient program. And that's what I did. I went into an inpatient facility for 3 months.
Yeah.
The experience itself...
Be honest. Be honest. I can see. I'm going to have a sip.
The experience itself, I learned a lot. It was the first time that I actually acknowledged that, like, maybe I have a problem with substances. Maybe something about the way that I'm doing this is off. And I guess one of the greatest things that came out of being an inpatient is that it was compulsory to attend meetings, like 12-step meetings while you were in the facility. And so I discovered the rooms, and I was very young at the time. I was 18.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And it felt like nothing initially resonated with me enough for me to commit to recovery, but enough resonated with me for me to be like, this is something that I can always come back to.
Yeah.
This is something that I have at the back of my head that, like, if I ever reach that point of darkness and desperation that they're talking about, maybe I know where to go, or maybe I know what the solution is. So I think that the benefit of that facility was definitely having access and, like, discovering that, like, I don't think I'm an addict because, like, my life doesn't look the way everyone else's lives look.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a problem. But still learning that there's a solution if I do ever think that I have a problem.
Yes. I find it so fascinating how with addiction, right, like we find substances, and just like you said, they feel like a solution. They really do. You can feel good at the time. You can feel like you're outside of yourself. You're not experiencing those problems, especially with substances that we were kind of using like that. Just you're hyper awake and just constantly outside of yourself. And then that come down hits. Yeah. And that's when everything is just amplified on another level. Like any kind of feeling you have is just amplified, anything. And then during that process, you're collecting even more trauma than what you previously had. And it's like you're just constantly piling on pain to try and stop the pain, because for a brief moment it stops, but then there's more. And I think it's really incredible that at 18 years old, you know, you were able to speak to someone and go into a facility. And again, sometimes the timing doesn't work, we're not ready, but to know that there's access to kind of a 12-step kind of environment. So you took that on. So you were there for 30 days? 3 months. Sorry, yes. I remember 3 in my brain.
So I was in the facility, and it definitely gave that knowledge of there is the space. I definitely wasn't ready though. Like you said, I think that I wasn't ready. I didn't want to commit to the process. I didn't want to commit to recovery. In my mind, I was still like, I'm 18 years old. Everybody drinks and does drugs. Why is it worse that I'm drinking and doing drugs? I definitely had that attitude towards it. And it kept me away. It did. I felt like I could still go out and do the things. And I guess that it definitely sat in the back of my mind, because there was a period... I went out one night and I took way too many drugs, and I actually thought that I'd overdosed. And that it was a Sunday morning, and I woke up, or not even woke up, I was awake. But I was like, maybe I should go back to that space that I felt helped a bit when I was in a facility. Like, maybe that's a good idea. And I found a meeting that was very close to my house. And I went. I was still not great. I was not in a good place at all. But I went to a meeting, and at the very end, of the preamble, they ask a question about if anyone is struggling or feeling like they may use or drink today. And I raised my hand.
Wow.
And at the end of the meeting, a bunch of people came up to me, and I got to talk about it, and I got to talk about where I was at and how I was feeling and what was going on, like to the best of my ability at the time, realistically. But I still got the opportunity to speak about it, and to speak about it without feeling judgment, or without feeling like I had done this catastrophic, terrible, horrific thing that made me an evil person. And I, funnily enough, met 2 people that day. I met multiple people that day, but there were 2 specific people that I did meet that day, and both of them, to varying degrees and throughout the period of my recovery now, have literally saved my life.
Wow.
So I and then after that, I decided to kind of go relatively consistently, and I was still using a bit more infrequently, but I was definitely still using. And I guess that cycle continued for like another 2 years, where I would use, maybe disappear from the rooms for a period, go back to a meeting feeling terrible, disappear again. And it was just the cycle. And eventually it did reach a point. I was 20 at the time, and I was working as a bartender in Melville. It's a fantastic idea for...
that was what I did.
It's a great idea.
I was a door lady. Oh my God.
And I was laying in my bed and like out of my mind. And I just remember laying there and thinking to myself, like, if I don't change something right now, like I can't wait, it needs to happen right now. If I don't change something right now, I'm going to die. Or worse than that, I'm going to keep living this life. And not ever actually be able to escape it, because I can't die.
Wow.
And so I called the facility that morning. Well, I called my mother first. I did call my mom first, and I was like, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And she was like, I think that's a great idea. I think you've needed help for a very long time, and you just didn't
And she was supportive.
Yeah, my mom's been incredible.
That's amazing.
She really has. Even with my mental health, like my mom's always been incredible.
Wow.
And like very supportive and very open, and like she really has been incredible. Like I don't think that I would have ever felt okay enough to go into treatment or to ask for help if I didn't have the mom that I have.
It is amazing.
And I wasn't living with her at the time, but when I called her and said, this is my plan, I'm going to call the facility now, she was like, okay, you pack your bags and then I'm going to come and fetch you and I'm going to take you to the facility and we're going to do that. And I did do that. And I think that for me personally, I don't think, like, given my life as a whole, my very long life as a whole, I don't think that any amount of physical pain or trauma would have been enough until I was absolutely and completely spiritually broken.
Yeah.
And that's the point that I was at that Sunday. Like, I don't think that any amount of like physical pain would have convinced me that I need to actually stop this and I need to deal with the shit that has happened so that I don't go back ever.
Yeah.
And I went into treatment and I stayed for 30 days. And while I was in treatment, they announced COVID lockdown level 5 for the first time. So I came out of treatment, I think it was a Tuesday, and the Thursday the hard lockdown started. And it was the best thing for my recovery.
For sure. I'm thinking, like, I always think, and I've said this to someone else, like, 2020, I've never been so concerned. Like, for Abbott, like, they banned alcohol. People couldn't get alcohol. People went into withdrawals at home during that time. I mean, we got people, if they wanted fake alcohol, fake. If they wanted alcohol, get alcohol. But, I mean, it was a dangerous time. But for you, leaving a facility and then also going straight into lockdown is also so dangerous in its own way because you're completely isolated. Yeah.
And I think that I'd grown, like my experience with recovery leading up to that was very community-based and very reliant on the idea of connection. And so to leave that space and like having had the thoughts of like, I'm going to go out into a community, I'm going to go out into a group of people who understand and who like perceive things in very similar ways and have very similar experiences. Leaving a facility and going out into a world that's completely shut down was a very isolating experience, but I do think that it was the best thing for my recovery. I think that it forced me into a position of having to sit with myself and forced me into a position of like having to actually deal with things and like process things and
that's
figure
the hardest
out
part.
And like kind of figure out how to move through the world independently, I guess, or like figuring those things out. And I still did the pillars to the best of my ability. I did like 5 online meetings a day. I still did the things that I needed to do. It was just a very different experience to the way that I had always engaged with 12-step programs. But yeah, so that was my early recovery, was hard lockdown.
That's insane to me. That's well done. Like, well done, dude. I've seen, wow. 2020 was a time. And I can't imagine just leaving rehab, did you go straight home?
Yeah.
Going home and then like, you can't leave your house now.
Yeah.
So enjoy.
Yeah.
But I can see how that feeling, for me, the hardest part of recovery will always be that just being able to sit with myself and sit, especially when you're coping with either disassociating or acting on a behavioral thing. To just sit with it is terrifying, but when you're forced to and you actually get through it, like, you deserve all props for that. Like, be kind to yourself. I'll be kind to you.
That was early recovery, basically. Was just being at home and doing at home things and trying to, I was still studying at the time. I was in my final year.
What were you studying?
I was majoring in psychology and philosophy.
Amazing.
So I was still busy with my undergrad at that point, and it was just like, also I guess it taught me a lot about balance and like finding the ways to balance my life healthily without relying on every mechanism that I had ever learned before or like historically. And that was literally like my first year of recovery. And then I guess eventually meetings opened up and you could kind of go back into that space. And so I did go back for a period. I think, like, if I were to ever convey one message that recovery has taught me,
Go for it.
it would be that life is still hard. Life is still very fucking hard. But it would be infinitely harder if I was still doing drugs and alcohol. And after my first year milestone, I actually ended up back in a mental health facility because I just wasn't doing well, and I tried to kill myself again for like the millionth time, and I just wasn't coping as a whole. And I think that, again, like lots of things that I'd either started to process and then stopped processing because other shit was going on, or like shit that I just hadn't even begun to address. It just was all happening all at once, it felt. And so I did end up back in a facility again. I think I was like 14 months clean. And it helped. It was the forced pause, I guess, that I needed to like life and to like just be in an isolated place where it's nothing but myself and focusing on like me and where I'm at and how I'm feeling and what I need. And I'm also bipolar. And so it also helped in terms of like getting my medication correct.
Yes.
And yeah, it was...
Zach, thank you for sharing about that. A lot of people believe that, we say this a lot, like you put down the substances, things should just start sorting themselves out. But you start actually doing the work and actually sitting with yourself and kind of working on fixing behaviors, or at the very least, identifying behaviors you want to fix. But that doesn't solve life. That doesn't solve trauma. It doesn't solve everything. It's moving through it. And in my third year of recovery, exact same thing. I went into an institution and I really had to work on my mental health. My primary issue, which was the eating disorder, which is my OCD and things like that, like really came out like badly because I was doing well. I got a job. I started doing good in life, like forming kind of connections and relationships. But I still struggled with this one thing, and it was just mine, and I didn't want anyone else to take it from me. It made me feel present, but also disassociated me. It's that juxtaposition you share about a lot. And I went in, and I felt so ashamed of myself. Like, I couldn't go back to a community of recovery because why am I not living a recovery? But I was, by going and getting the help. And saying I am struggling, and also medication. Like a lot of people are like, you shouldn't be on medication. I'm like, what, do you want me to see webs going between my fingers if I don't take my antipsychotics or my medication? You know? And that's an important topic.
I definitely think I'm also a big advocate for like, if you have something wrong, if you are diabetic and you need medication, you're going to take the medication. Like if you need help and the help looks like medication, why are you not taking the medication? You know, like obviously within reason. I think that sometimes things can be pathologized that don't necessarily need to be, or like, it's not to say that you should definitely be on medication. Like that's definitely not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that like if something is wrong and you need help and the solution or the help that you need is medication, like in my mind, I'm going to take the medication. The medication has literally kept me alive. I still take the medication. Like the medication has literally kept me here. And so like nothing is going to convince me that that's not something that will continue to keep me here when historical evidence has shown me that it has kept me here and it has kept me alive and it has kept me like mostly sane. And I think, but like all of that aside, well, not aside, but life still throws curveballs. I think it's definitely, recovery has definitely been curveballs.
What happened when you went to the facility, and how were the people in your life around you, like even in the recovery space, when you chose to go get help?
Incredible.
Cool.
My family was very supportive. Even my dad, I had a conversation with him afterwards, and it was, I guess that there's a lot of maybe like stigma, well, not necessarily stigma, but just the way that my dad grew up, and like topics surrounding mental health were not spoken about at all, and so he has a very like closed perspective of it. But after that, we actually sat down and we had a conversation, and he explained to me that it was always really hard for him because he couldn't understand or figure out what was wrong, and more than that, like he couldn't figure out how to help. And so he struggled with that quite a lot. And I appreciated the conversation because we'd never had those kinds of conversations before. So to kind of get to sit down and talk about it so openly also felt very freeing. And I also had a lot of my recovery friends actually came to visit me in the facility. So I definitely had support, and I had friends, and I think that depression just feels very isolating, even if the reality of the isolation is not, you're not actually isolated. Like, it just feels very isolating because internally you're struggling so much that like you feel alone in those feelings. You feel alone in the pain. You feel alone in the whatever it is. And it's taken me a really long time. Like, even now, still sometimes I struggle with the idea that like I'm not actually alone. I have people in my life who I love and who love me and who support me and care and like all of those things. But yeah, so I was in the facility. It helped. It definitely helped. And I left the facility and just, I guess, one foot in front of the other is what it has looked like since then. And many curveballs.
Do you want to share any? It's just lifing.
Lifing, and I think, I think that I've realized in this year, so it's been 5 years, 8 months-ish now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And what I've realized in this past period, so my milestone is in Feb, so between Feb and now, what I've realized is that I have always thrived in chaos. And I've always thrived when there's like shit going on. When shit hits the fan, I'm very good in a crisis situation. Like, in my first year of recovery, it was hard lockdown. In my second year of recovery, I was in an inpatient facility, and my sister was really struggling with her mental health. Like, in my third year, I was studying full-time. I was working full-time. It was rough. And then in my fourth year, I can't even remember, but I can tell you that there was shit going on. As it does, it's life. And in my fifth year, so last year, my best friend died. Very suddenly, very shockingly, I guess. He was also in recovery, and he was like my pillar. He was like my sixth pillar, which I know isn't healthy, and I understand that's not how it's supposed to be done. But he was my best friend, and he literally, like, from before I even entered recovery, he knew me since I was 18 years old, and we had very similar life experiences and very similar like family history, and like we just clicked. And he literally, I don't know how else to explain it beyond, he literally dragged me through my early recovery, kicking and screaming. He dragged me through my early recovery. Like, he carried me in ways that I can't even fully express. And he got very sick, and he was 9 years clean at the time, and young, like very young. All of it was just like shocking. Like, you're 27 years old, you're healthy, you've been in recovery for a long time. Like, all of this is just it should never have happened, I think. And he got sick, and he passed away very suddenly after getting sick. And needless to say, it was very dark after that. And I struggled a lot, and I struggled to make sense of it. I struggled to grieve this person that I didn't feel like I should be grieving. Like, not because he didn't deserve the grief, but more like, he should be alive. It
shouldn't have happened.
It should never have happened. Like, you were 27 years old. This should have never, ever, ever happened. Like, we were supposed to have our whole lives together, our whole recoveries together, and now that's just gone. that
I'm struggling, or to deal with those emotions is such a powerful, powerful thing. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's devastating. It's grief. It's pain. It's real. And I understand the self-harm that came in place of that. I get it. I get it. And the fact that you can speak about it and say, hey, that is what happened. And I picked that up because of what I was going through. And I went into that toolbox and I took something and I can now speak about it. Like, you are an amazing human being who kept coming back for that. And your friend, and I know it's the worst when people say this, but I really mean it, is like proud of you for staying. Like for staying, and you should be proud of you for staying and still being able to say, hey, I'm struggling, or I struggled with this behavior and I need help for that. So, and I think a lot of people need to hear that it's okay to be a little bit kind to yourself in instances like that, and not self-flagellate and be like, I fucked up big time. You were trying to cope, and you weren't in that sense, but you found something, and you're able to say, this is what happened and this is what I did through that grief. Like, thank you. Just thank you.
And I think also, like, it's so easy to go back to what's comfortable. You know, like, I'm 26 years old now. That means I've been doing it for too many years for me to even count. 17, I think. Like, I've relied on that as a coping mechanism for 17 years.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, at least I think I said it at the beginning, like, breaking that pattern has been so much harder than putting down drugs and alcohol. And it came up in my step work, actually, where I said that, like, it was about reservations, and, like, is there anything that I think that would not drive me to use, but, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't think that there's, like, after having, like, gone through that incredibly difficult process, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that is a reservation for drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
I can't say the same thing about cutting, though.
Yeah.
Not with absolute confidence. Like, I want to think and believe that I'm far enough along and I've started the process, but I have relied on it for longer than I haven't relied on it.
Yeah. You were 9.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are things for you right now, like, life-wise, in terms of recovery, in terms of life, in terms of dealing with your grief and things like that? Like, what is the new toolbox that you have, if that makes sense? That like you can implement day to day and kind of reach in and say, maybe I'll take this for today, you know?
Yeah. I think the new toolbox. I went through a period where I felt very disillusioned about the 12 steps and 12-step programs and the function of them and, like, the usefulness of them.
Share about it if you would like.
I stopped going to meetings.
Yeah.
I didn't relapse. I didn't feel the desire to use during the time that I wasn't at meetings. But I definitely felt like my life was, like, slowly spiraling out of control, and behaviors that are not ideal in recovery were starting to come to the surface again. And so I did go back to meetings, and I've been going back consistently since then. And, like, I guess in terms of recovery and the 5 pillars, all of them are in place at the moment. Like, I have a sponsor, I'm doing step work, I go to meetings once a week, I do service, like, all of the things. My higher power is still a tricky one.
Same.
It's still like, it's a bit shaky. I was raised very Muslim, and that's not really the path that I've followed, I guess. But in terms of, like, recovery, I've got those things, and those are the things that help me maintain my recovery, and those are the things that I know to do, and I think that's definitely part of the toolbox. I go to therapy every single week. I have for a very long time, and that's definitely part of my toolbox, is, like, being able to sit down and talk to someone and not just sit with things in my head and not just like sit with I feel like my brain becomes an echo chamber.
Yep.
And it just repeats the same shit back at me, and then it warps it at some point. Like everything just becomes very fucked up if it's just me in my head.
Yeah.
So therapy is definitely something that's helped me personally. And like I said, I take my medication, and I guess those are some of the tool things. I guess it's also just working on fixing the underlying behaviors that were characteristic of my addiction.
Yeah.
So it's also working on fixing that and replacing those patterns with better ones. And another big thing that I've also had to work on is communication, and not like avoiding problems. And pretending that they don't exist until things explode, and then I seem crazy because I'm exploding about a shoe on the floor, but actually I'm exploding about like 3 years worth of shit and not the shoe on the floor.
Yeah.
So definitely finding more effective ways to communicate has also been something that I've had to learn and put in the toolbox. It's been a journey.
Yeah.
Like, I hate conflict. I'll probably still cry, but I'll tell you how I feel. Like, I'll tell you what's wrong or what's going on. I won't avoid it. I might cry while I tell you, but like, I'll tell you. Crying has actually been a good one.
Oh, that's great.
Ew.
Tell me.
Ew. I would have never said, if you asked me this 2 years ago, I would have never said that crying has been a good one. But I understand why they say it's a release. It is, in fact, a release. They were right.
Yeah.
And I think being kinder to myself, or like being on the journey to being kinder to myself, has also been very important for me. I feel like I've always, for as long as I can remember, I have always been very hard on myself, and like disproportionately so. I've always been incredibly hard on myself, and you know, like those cliches of like, you'd never speak to a person that you love like that. Why are you speaking to yourself like that? I was always like, fuck off, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I would never speak to a person that I love the way I speak to myself. You're right. But that's not the point. I deserve to be hard on myself. It was just...
Mm-hmm. It's the same thing of, it's my body, I can do what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, so being kinder to myself has also been something. I'm learning. I'm not there yet. I'll admit that one. I'm not there yet. I'm learning. It's getting there. And just figuring it out as I go. And like all of those things about like just doing the best that I can. And my best looks different every day. Like today I might be able to give 100% because the best of what I have is 100%. And tomorrow it might be 25, and that's okay. Like, it's okay that my capacity changes. It's okay that, like, depending on what's going on in my life, I have a different capacity. I have different abilities. I can take on more or less depending on where I'm at. And just figuring those kinds of things out. And, like, life is... I'm learning and I'm growing, and I'm doing the next right thing and putting one foot in front of the other, and like all of those things. And I guess that's all I really can do.
Do you know what I got from that? And I love every single thing you said. I love that we have our own little toolboxes now that are quite healthy. And, you know, we might fall back into the old one or try to sneak it in there once in a while. But we've got these new toolboxes. And what I love is, someone once said this to me, and they said, just be where your feet are. And I don't know why, but I found it so comforting. Because like you, my brain becomes an echo chamber, like, and it's it's dark, it's scary, and it's loud. But when I say to myself, just be where your feet are, then I can go to I keep using this analogy, to my little toolbox and take out the one thing that works in that moment. And you know what? Sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't go to that
okay.
toolbox. Yeah.
And that's okay. I think like that's also part of being kinder to yourself, is acknowledging that like we've probably had really problematic patterns for a very long time, and it's okay that sometimes our brains don't automatically go, I should meditate and breathe. Like,
Mine
it's
never
okay that sometimes our brain goes binge eat a whole pizza and then feel terrible afterwards. Like, that's also okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Zach, your story is powerful. And I don't know how to thank you, because you shared on so many things that a lot of people struggle with. From self-harm, mental health, through to addiction, through to struggling with emotional regulation at certain points, and sharing what works for you is going to help. And I'm telling you, so many people. And you've helped me. I'm sitting here and I'm sitting with a lot of stuff that I know I need to go back on and re-look at within myself. I don't go for therapy, I used to. And I just need to implement tools I have previously learned from therapy a bit more in my life. And that is something I'm taking away. And you know what? Like I said this to you, like, be kind to yourself. Dude, I need to do that as well. Like, I'm going to be for real. Like, I need to do that too.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, is the power of connection and community. We spoke a lot about the 12 steps, but there's so many different kinds of communities and connections, be it online, offline, or that you can create yourself that are available. And just being able to sit down with someone else and hear your story makes me feel connected and truly makes me feel where my feet are and be where my feet are. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share with anyone? Any last words you'd like to share?
No, I think I've said everything. Maybe just to reiterate the kindness thing and like the world is harsh enough as it is. Like, shit happens, things are hard, and I know that it isn't easy, but like, being hard on yourself and being unkind to yourself just makes an already harsh world even harsher. And I'm saying that as someone who's still on the journey of kindness to myself, but who can definitely acknowledge that it's a significantly better way to live than to consistently destroy yourself verbally or like mentally. But yeah, thank you, Tony. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Are you feeling better? Are you feeling okay? Zach, can I give you a hug? I just really want to say thank you for everything. Whoa. Thank you so much, dude. Already, thank you. And to all of you out there, first of all, thank you to everyone who's been here, everyone at the studio. We love you. And Zach, what an honor. What an absolute honor. Thank you. And to everyone out there, please be kind to yourself and remember that. And also remember, we do recover. Thank you. Bye, guys. Zach has started crying. No, it was amazing. Holy shit. Oh, I know what you're up to. He's doing the clapper. He's doing the clapper.
Actually, I don't even know what to say. It's just for sinking.
We're so back.
We're so back, guys. We're so back. So there's one thing. Oratile helped me get to this point. So shout out to our amazing producer and friend. I love you. I didn't go into detail about it. We spoke a lot about like the help you got in terms of addiction, substances and alcohol. What steps did you take to help you through the self-harm struggles that you've been through?
So I think that there were two big ones, or like there were two major things that helped the most. The first one was more of like an internal processing kind of step, and it was when I found out that my sister was in fact self-harming. So I have a little sister. Well, I say little. She's 18 now. She's not little anymore. But like in my mind, that will always be my little sister. I found out that she was self-harming. It was very close to the beginning of my recovery from substances. I think she was about 13 or 14 at the time. And I think that selfishly, the way in which that helped me, because obviously her self-harming is not about me, but the way in which it helped me was in terms of understanding the impact that the behavior had on the people around me. Whereas historically, I was definitely under the impression that like, this is my body. I'm not hurting anybody else. This is my body. I'm hurting myself. And it's fine for me to hurt myself because it's my body and so it's my decision. And I think that seeing my sister struggle with it changed that approach, or changed that perspective from just this is my body and I feel no shame or guilt or attachment to the way that I'm hurting myself, to I can understand the impact that this behavior has on the people around me, and I can understand the difficulties in watching someone that you love very dearly try to destroy themselves in that way. I think that was a very big mental shift for me that definitely helped. And then I think that in terms of like practice, or in terms of what I'm actively doing, my sponsor suggested that I work the 12 steps with self-harm. And in like, just instead of reading the question for drugs, you look at it for self-harm, and you can use the same little green and gold book, and kind of going through that. And I think that working that honestly and like working that with honesty and open-mindedness, and like approaching it like that, has also helped in terms of I get to see the way that I'm feeling on paper, and that's always helped me. I've always found that like writing things down helps me process. So actually looking at the things that I'm writing, and like being able to go back and look at them again and kind of figure out like, oh, this is how I was feeling on this day, but maybe that's not necessarily the case anymore. This is where I'm at now. Those two things collectively have probably been the most useful for me in terms of like working on my self-harm recovery.
And in terms of therapy, I know, do you know any therapy models that people would usually turn to? I mean, I know cognitive behavioral therapy, there's all different kinds of behavioral models. Did those work, or did you find more internal work?
I did not find that those worked. So you are right, there is cognitive behavioral therapy, there's dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, and those are what you'd often learn when you go into like inpatient treatments. Most of them follow CBT or DBT models. I didn't find that they worked for me, and it isn't to say that they won't work for everybody. I just think that the approach that I needed was more, and I guess like what also made me more open to the approach of using the 12 steps and just applying it to self-harm was the fact that like I've worked the steps for drugs and alcohol, so I know the effectiveness of it, and I know the effectiveness of the approach for me specifically.
Got you.
So implementing the same approach in a very similar way to another thing that I can easily acknowledge as an addiction has helped me. But CBT, DBT, those things, I think that those can be very good in terms of helping to kind of like reframe things in your head for yourself. And like DBT is very much about moving from like the rational mind and the emotional mind to like the wise mind. And like that's the intersection of strictly rationality and strictly emotional thinking to like a more in-between balanced kind of state where you pause. And like CBT also is very much about reframing your thinking, and it's all about cognition at the end of the day, those things. And I think that they help a lot of people. I think that they can be very useful. I think that they are also like, you can learn a lot about those things with ease, you know, and you can learn a lot about those things in isolation. Whereas I think that 12-step programs obviously rely on very heavily on the idea of community. And I think that there's definitely a lot of shame and stigma attached to self-harm still. And so learning in isolation and finding solutions in isolation might work for some people.
Wow. I feel it's so important to have this discussion because a lot of people are struggling, or specifically because it does start, not usually, I don't know the stats, for people quite young. Parents and loved ones are unsure of, you know, the best kind of approaches for it. So it's nice to just unpack what's worked for you, all these different approaches, and also for people to know that they're not alone and there is a way to move through it. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for we called Zach. We were like, please come back. We need to ask this question. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Any other questions? Zach? Thank you.
Free Friday night?
They're doing a book club now. They're doing a book club in the realm of Hungry Ghosts.
10 out of 10 read. Excellent. Love Gabor Mate. Yeah.
I'm like obsessed.
What do you think?
Yeah, what do you think of Tom Hanks? And this is before, we know what we're going to ask every guest.
I'm gonna go neutral.
Oh,
I'm gonna
good
go. I
answer.
don't have any stake in this. I don't give enough of a fuck to like have
Yeah, fair.
big feelings. I don't have big feelings about Tom Hanks, but I understand why you and Fabian do. I get it.
Dalen
I
over
see
there
the
loves
vision.
him.
Right here, guys.
It's done. It's done.
Done.
Fuck you, Tom Hanks. You know what you did.
I'll